The word terror comes from the Latin and was first used at the time of the French Revolution, when the Régime de la Terreur was created by Maximilien de Robespierre. Terror is usually referred to as a tyranny or a reign of fear and terror. The term terrorism then evolved from the French derivation of terreur to terrorism. Very often we come across new reports in the media of attacks and terror warnings, funerals, and security measures. Since such frequent reports on terrorism have not been around for long, some people mistakenly assume that terrorism is a rather recent phenomenon. Terrorism, however, has been around since ancient times, as forerunners of terrorist methods appeared back then. The main reason why we are often unaware of this is that such acts are not previously known by the word terrorism, and with good reason. Although they had similar elements to today's terror attacks, their basic structure was different. Among the historical predecessors of terrorist acts are political murders from the Bible or tyrannicides from Greek or Roman antiquity, which were mostly single murders. However, there are also precursors of organized terrorist groups, such as the Sicarians, which already exist in ancient and medieval times. Modern terrorism has existed since about the 1880s. It is divided into 4 groups. The first wave refers to anarchism, the second to anti-colonial terrorism. The third wave was mainly directed against imperialist states, which wanted to instrumentalize the population of third world countries for their own purposes. The fourth and current wave of terrorism deals with mostly religious-motivated terrorism. There are many different causes for terrorism: political reasons, economic reasons, religious reasons, psychological reasons, historical reasons, social reasons, single-issue reasons, and other reasons. To this day, one of the most known terrorist attacks is 9/11, where almost 3,000 people were killed. Al-Qaeda, an Islamic extremist group, hijacked 4 airplanes in the United States. 2 of the hijackers flew them into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. A third plane hit the Pentagon outside Washington, and a fourth plane crashed in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The U.S. government under George W. Bush reacted with the war in Afghanistan in 2001, which he claimed was intended to smash al-Qaeda. The U.S. government also justified the 2003 war in Iraq and the basis of the attacks, among other things. Osama bin Laden first claimed responsibility for the attacks in 2004. U.S. soldiers killed him in Operation Neptune Spear on May 2, 2011. Terrorists want to attract public attention not through words but through actions, be it in the form of an attack or a video message with frightening content. The main thing is that it shocks the viewer and thus remains in his memory. The terrorist calculus is based on 3 elements: an act of violence, an emotional reaction, and certain behavioral reactions. The most important thing is to make the act of violence public. This is the best way to give the terrorists the best chance of achieving their goal. Terror, as its name suggests, causes fear and terror. Fear is something that has always existed in our society, but what has now brought about a major change is its presence in the media. In the case of a terrorist attack, the media coverage is so timely and often without censorship that one feels as if one is directly involved in the event. There is a symbiotic relationship between terrorism and the media, and it can be said that today's terrorism, as an extreme form of communication, lives through a large extent from media coverage, whether positive or negative. But terrorists also use the media in other forms, for example as a propaganda platform to recruit new members, to obtain information for planning attacks, as a means of blackmail or manipulation, for example through false claims of responsibility. Another example of the symbiosis between terrorism and the media is the fact that terrorism became more frequent when mass newspapers came into circulation, increased again when broadcast TV was introduced, became international since satellite TV came into existence, and became even more radicalized since the internet, smartphones, and social media came into existence. The internet and social media led to an increase of self-radicalization. Large terror organizations like ISIS work with worldwide networks and one-on-one recruitment.
I talk about in the book is the one-on-one recruitment that they do. It takes enormous patience and enormous amounts of time But when Islamic State finds a person who is perhaps interested, there's a courtship that goes on involving gifts, everything from copies of the Quran to bars of chocolate that gets sent to that person, but the dialogue continues online. Terrorists have always manipulated media, whether it's news coverage or using media as Islamic State does to publicize itself.
Especially young people who are longing for affiliation and community respond to the propaganda on social media.
For those people that are on the edge, this could have a lot of resonance. You're speaking to them in a language they understand, video, moving imagery, and music. And then this message comes in about, we want you. People do want to belong to tribes, and this is saying, join our tribe. They're using products from American culture, video games, for their purposes and making a message that works for them. So it's the reverse of our culture where we say escape real life and play a game. They're saying escape your life, come play a real game with real consequences where we are.
Recently, there have also been attempts to bring more women closer to their potential role in such an organization.
Some fairly well known are also using Twitter to recruit new members from the West.
Like Laith, who is one of the premier female jihadis. She's British, and she's the one that keeps calling to women around the world, especially women in the Western countries, to come and join the global jihad. They think that they're doing something good for their community or their people.
A darker side of the fairer sex, now wanted around the world.
Since 2003, Iraq had the highest number of terror-related deaths and incidents.
Cry from the grainy, shaky, unfocused terrorist videos we're used to seeing, this production displays glossy camera work and high-level production techniques.
However, in 2018, Afghanistan reached the top of the list. It had 7,379 fatalities and 1,443 terrorist incidents.
We clearly see those figures for Afghanistan. Almost 1 out of 2 persons killed by terrorism fell in Afghanistan by 2 groups. The Taliban, 38% of global casualties, and also by the Khorasan chapter of Islamic State that completes these to almost 50% of all casualties falling all over the world. I think it's destabilization in this country. That's what they are aiming for. They want to destabilize and undermine the government that is in place. We have seen elections in the past year that has, of course, driven their ambition to influence. But it's clear that all the factors that can lead to terrorism are still present in Afghanistan.
The Taliban are responsible for 83% of these fatalities in Afghanistan. These make them the deadliest terrorist group in the world.
That's because the Taliban are now in control of more of Afghanistan since 2001. Today, almost 18% of all Afghan districts are under Taliban control, and 48% are contested.
Now the question is, what can you do against terrorism, especially in the EU, who has been a victim of many attacks in the past years? As a result of the attack on Paris in 2015, the EU, and especially the country concerned, France, tighten controls at the external borders and do more controls within the country to ensure the safety in Europe. In addition to the EU works on an improved information exchange between member states. Improvement and expansion of the database should show the early formation of terrorist groups and prevent future attacks. Another way the European Union wants to stop terrorism is through enhanced cooperation with third world countries. In February 2015, the Council decided to step up foreign policy measures to combat terrorism, in particular in the Mediterranean, the Middle East, North Africa, the Gulf region, and the Sahel. But how are these approaches enforced, especially in a country affected by terrorism like France?
The chief prosecutor of the Court of Paris told us what lessons his department had learned since the attack.
Ça nous a conduit à reconsidérer en la musclant, en la renforçant notre politique.
It's led us to rethink our criminal policy by beefing it up, by reinforcing it. It's tougher on jihadist terrorists, including those who went to fight in Syria. It's tougher on returnees who fought in the ranks of Daesh. We've judiciarized the issue, that is to say, we systematically pursue them in the criminal courts. And finally, we've reconsidered our procedures by always trying to improve them, especially in the care of victims.
Notamment sur la prise en charge des victimes.